Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Hope everybody got outside on this beautiful day before coming back in for the sit. I want to welcome, there's one new person here, welcome, that I haven't seen before. And tonight, I want to talk about on being a person of no rank. This is a phrase that you'll hear in the Zen world, being a person of no rank. And what that can suggest to us about practice and where to point as we engage a life of practice. Because practice isn't just one-time thing. There's nothing to get. Actually, we are coming into our own. We are coming fully into our life. And beginning to recognize as we go forward in practice, everything that gets in the way of our full vitality, fully being present and appreciative and at ease in our life and our life circumstances, whatever they are. Even if they're difficult, we can make them a whole lot more difficult by resisting and pushing against and trying to make it not be that way. So I think of being a person of no rank as actually being a truly mature human being. True maturity. So what does it have to do with? Does it have to do with our age? Excuse me. Our job title or our role in the world, in our community, in our tribe, in our families? And how does this relate to the Buddha's enlightenment? What is the connection between being a fully mature human being and being awake to our Buddha nature, to Buddha nature? What is the nature of this life and what is my place in it? Excuse me. So these are questions that we engage in practice. Maybe what brings us to practice. I have a frog in my throat. Get out, frog. The world is very caught up in evaluation and status, in higher and lower, and an endless set of opposites, pleasure and pain, success and failure, winning and losing, fame and disrepute. This is the 8 worldly winds. The 8 worldly winds. And all these dyads. So we can get very caught up in this aspect of life. But what's the relationship of the 8 worldly winds to Buddha maturity and gaining access to the treasure that we're born to, our true life? When we get caught up in the 8 worldly winds, we seriously narrow our experience of our life and our ability to tap this treasure that comes with clear seeing and an open heart. We can all come into our ability to see more clearly and to open our hearts. But one thing that gets in our way is our evaluating ourselves in comparison to others and evaluating others in comparison to others and in comparison to our ideas about others. All of these comparisons are in the mind. They can involve fantasies or images we've seen in the movies or read about in books that archetypes, fairy tale archetypes, that drive our inner life experience. And we can become more and more aware of these images that we're holding out as the way we should be or the way it should be. So when you're really comparing yourself to others in the world or to the images you hold, how do you rank? How would you rank yourself? We can bring any kind of standards that we use to compare ourselves to others. This comparing mind that runs kind of like a subterranean river through our thoughts and our experience. This is sizing us up in relation to other or our thoughts. It's like a program that's always running out of our awareness, but really influencing what we become aware of and how we feel about it and what we think about it. All of these standards can be brought into how we understand Zen teachings, which is really unfortunate because Zen practice can reveal a wider, deeper truth that then can be accomplished by all of the ways that we rank things. Zen practice, part of the liberation of Zen practice is really seeing into the ways that we compare, these scales of evaluation that we bring into our experience that really catch us up and get us all knotted up and leave us less present to what is actually going on, irregardless of this little self. So Zen teaches us to see through rank, to release and be released from the restraint of our habitually holding on to any static, stable, dyadic, permanent self-designation or evaluation. You know, we can be really riveted by a very narrow set of standards that we hold ourselves to. And while being wrapped up in that, we miss who we are and what our life is. With our Zen practice, we can come to see for ourselves how being attached to some particular life condition or a standard for judging ourselves or comparing ourselves to others, sooner or later always leads us to difficulties, to say the least. Because it's out of alignment. These are ideas and thoughts that are out of alignment with the actual. So then we can ask ourselves, where does a sense of rightness or completion or authenticity come from? What is the source for this life? Whatever comes along is what our life is. In this moment, this is what our life is. This is what life is. Completeness is already here. This is complete. There's not a hair's breadth deviation anywhere in this moment arising. It is complete as it is. And you are only ever just who you are in this moment, which is evolving continually. You know, when we sit here together for an hour or so, it doesn't look like much is changing, but you know, every moment is unique. If only what changes is when you lift your eyes from the screen and look out the window and at the fading light. There's always change afoot in some way or another if we're really paying attention. But if we don't know who we are or haven't seen into the nature of this life and the self, then any little or big change in the weather can knock us about and cause us to be very ill at ease. This is the existential dilemma that we bring to Zen practice. And this is the dilemma that Zen practice addresses. Zen practice does not transform samsara. Samsara, the nature of samsara is desire and clinging and difficulties. That's the first noble truth. So that's not what we're doing. We're not transforming samsara. But we certainly are able to open to the enormity of the range of our life. So we're all working with the narrowing that we do. This life of mine is like yours in that way. I'm always working with it. And your life is like mine in that way. We have this in common. We have an ordinary life that we share in all of its particulars and its difficulties. And we also all have consciousness. From the point of view of the self, this what we call the small self, the self of me and mine, we are either in or out of the group, or the cool clique, or the tribe, or the safety of the community. From the point of view of this near mind self, we are subject to all of the vagaries of life. We can be battered about by all of the 8 worldly winds. We're either one up or one down compared to whoever we encounter, or whatever standard we're using at the time in a particular situation. So this is how we rank the self, this self of me and mine, and know whether we're okay or whether we're not okay. And we tend to maintain this view of the self and tend it and work it, trying to make it this little self better, which is fine. I mean, education is an important thing to do. Building skills is important in this life. It's one of our tools. It's one of the 1,000 tools of Kuan Yin. One of the ways that we enact our life of compassionate action. But there's another view that lies outside of rank, that's not about comparison. We call this the intimate view of life, which is being open to just what is. That doesn't exist on a scale of what's worth it, what's better, what's worse, what's more lovable, what's more worthwhile, but has been described by one Zen master as one vast field of practice. When we get rid of all of the walls and fences we build around the small self, our life becomes a vast field of possibility. Many choices, many possibilities. When we're free from a concern about the self, what I am or what I have or don't have. When we're no longer using that as the guiding principle for our life. And we can realize this freedom from evaluating the self through our practice. And when you get free of constant self-evaluation, you can realize a kind of freedom of function that releases you to be much more flexible and creative in life. And really use the life rather than being used by your life. This is maturity, and it's possible for us. Coming to know the nature of our life is an ongoing proposition. It's an ongoingness, since we have only what is here and now ever, and we continue to. We don't know the conditions that'll emerge and need to be responded to in ways that are different from what's going on right now. Recent conditions have thrown a lot of people who thought themselves quite sorted out, have thrown for a loop. So no matter how awake you are, when conditions change drastically, the ordinary self is challenged. That's true for all of us, no matter how much practice we do. These are very challenging times because there are huge changes afoot. So it's really useful to have a lively understanding of the two truths. The truth of ordinary human life and the truth of awake and open heart-mind, which is not determined by categories, but is always open. And as ordinary human beings, we live in samsaric conditions. But then also as people of the way, we are not separate. The self is settled entirely on the self, as Sawaki Roshi has phrased it. A person of no rank is whole and complete and knows that it has never been any different. When you come home to the inmost source of life, it has always been this way and is free of the tether of rank as our guiding principle. We are no longer held by that concern. This is an enormous transformation that is possible. But we're always reminded too that even as we practice the way, if we don't keep opening and continuously opening, we can get caught again. There are huge forces of distraction and delusion in samsara, and we are all affected by that. We can get trapped again in a rigid set of expectations. And this is why, and this is part of the wisdom of Dogen's teaching on continual practice, continual awakening, practice enlightenment. It is not a state. It's not a kind of a stake in the ground. And once we get there, we're always there. We have arrived. And because this life is so multi-determined, we're so interdependently arising all the time. So we continually practice because it is good. It is very good. And changes come from this developing continuous practice that unfolds through distinct seasons. And sometimes we're so clear, and sometimes we're so forgetting that clarity. We're so subject once again to all of these frames of mind and the roof brain chatter. We forget our basic nature. In the teachings, there are a lot of schemas that help organize the kind of the developmental course of a life of practice. these schemas are, the 10 ox herding pictures, you may know of it. Or the 5 ranks is another one of these schemas. And what's useful about them is that they provide a sense of what comes along with ongoing awakening practice. The complete awakening. We hear this phrase, complete awakening, complete unsurpassed awakening. Ooh, that is a trap. But in another way, it isn't. In another way, it just is what it said. It is what it is. Complete means always happening right now. Always right now, complete. And awakening. Awakening is an ing word. It means ongoing, right? Ongoing, always happening. That's what we can say. So a complete awakening, ongoing, always happening. There's no arrival. There's no departure. There's no beginning. There's no end. Just as our life goes on until it doesn't. So when we study these developmental stages, they can help us recognize when we're caught again in a limited idea in the mind, something that's limiting our complete awakening in the moment. We can get trapped by many teachings that are trying to point us to freedom. That's just our human way. That's our human condition. So here's a koan. There's a true person of no rank, not even a hair's breadth away, who is constantly coming and going. Who is that true person of no rank? The true person of no rank. Who is it? And we all need to realize this for ourselves. Only we can do this for ourselves. But the teachings point us and remind us, no, this is possible. Millions of people have awakened, have discovered the way of awakening. But the first time I heard Robert Aitken Roshi, my first teacher, recite this koan, I was dumbstruck. A true person of no rank. It immediately was my vow. It stirred me. I felt my nobility rise, the noble way, right? I would become a person of no rank. This was my vow. But it actually just embroiled me in a new kind of ranking. But that's okay, because it was attractive enough that it really caught. There's wholesome desire. And this is one. Our vows are wholesome desire. They take us in the direction of liberation. But I started to look at my Sangha mates and began wondering much more about enlightenment, which I had not originally been particularly interested in. I mean, I've always been interested in being wise, but enlightened, it's not a word that does much for me. But I started thinking about, who is a person here of no rank? So this was in Hawaii when I was at the Maui Zendo. So I'd look at the Tenzo. Are they enlightened? And the groundskeeper, is she enlightened? And the guest master, is she enlightened? And the shuso, is he enlightened? And what about my teacher? Is my teacher enlightened? How do I know? Is there anyone here who's enlightened that we don't even notice? So all of these were thoughts that would take me up, And so enlightenment was a thing that we have or we don't have. I got caught up in this new idea. The me that undertook the practice just wanted to be wise and free of such concepts. But I didn't even know what I was talking about. I didn't even know what any of this meant. But this is the nature of koan, right? You just can't stop chewing on the bone. This is a good use of obsessive mind, actually. If you've got to be obsessive about anything, you might as well obsess on your koan. There is a person of no rank who's constantly coming and going, and not even a hair's breadth away. Who is that true person of no rank? So here's a story that my friend Zuiho reminded me of. During the civil wars in feudal Japan, an invading army would quickly sweep into a town and take control. And in one particular village, everyone fled just before the army arrived, everyone except the Zen master. Curious about this old fellow, the general went to the temple to see for himself what kind of man this master was. And when he wasn't treated with deference and submissiveness to which he was accustomed, the general burst into anger. "You fool," he shouted as he reached for his sword. "Don't you realize you are standing before a man who could run you through without blinking an eye?" But despite the threat, the master seemed unmoved. "And do you realize," the master replied calmly, "that you are standing before a man who can be run through without blinking an eye?" I think this is a terrific story. One, because of course that's what he'd have to say. The master wasn't concerned about the rank or the sword or about life and death. He wasn't one down. He wasn't intimidated. He knew who he was, and he knew the nature of life and death. So he spoke to what was actual, just the fact in that moment. He knew who he was and what the situation was. He spoke straightforwardly to it and got on with the business at hand. He wasn't ignorant of the brute facts. He just existed outside of the power differential. And this is an example of a true person of no rank, existing outside of the status, the constant evaluative frame. So I guess what I'd say is that maturity, human maturity, comes with recognizing not only the unity of all life in all its particularities and variability, and the way that it all functions together in some remarkable way, lending us a flexibility to function as we need to in the best way. But we're in the habit of turning everything into an idea. And that's what we do when we live from our habitual cognition, our way of thinking our life, and identifying the thoughts as the self. But as people of the way, we can simply break this habit, the habit of knowing, of needing to know what to do, instead remaining open to what is actual right now and responding from this actual. We call this don't know mind, living. As soon as there is a knower, there is a self. This is the territory of practice, all of this. We don't have to know in order to experience. Knowing is extra, on top of reality, on top of the actual. It's been phrased as flowers in air. or a dream, something that has no substance in the here and now. A person of no rank awakens to the activity of the Dharma. We are really present to what is unfolding. And often it's not what we think. Coming from not separating one thought from another, one thing from another, self from environment. All of those are separations. Who we really are at any moment, the thought about it is not anywhere. Living in intimacy, intimately living, intimately indwelling, experiencing itself. Experience itself, we notice who we really are. It has nothing to do with rank and is outside of any idea at all. It's just the direct and inmost experience in this moment. I'm talking about no concepts, but this is a very concept-rich talk. So please, one of the phrases at the end of a Dharma talk that is used by Zen teachers often is, please wash out your ears with any of the words that I've just said and go forth. So I hope that there was something in this that you can chew on, a bone, the bone of liberation, as we all together come into being people of no rank. Thank you.